I developed a philosophy darker than looksmaxxing. For some time, I've been looking into a fresh new philosophy, slowly developing it, really taking my time for it, and making more sense of it over time. I find that this one is darker than the looksmaxxing trend. So looksmaxxing was an idea that had a sort of a peak in popularity in the past and still lingers around on social media within spaces and certain bubbles. Its popularity was also mainly coming from the fact that it is also quite pessimistic. But what is this philosophy that I'm talking about? And what could be darker than even looksmaxxing? The philosophy that I want to introduce to you to is fatalism. So, first I will give a definition or description of fatalism. So, compared to other philosophies, what does it mean? We can contrast it to free will or compare to it. So, free will is the idea that people make decisions free of external factors. Determinism is a step further into in the opposite direction, and is the concept that their decisions are affected by external factors. So, for example, biology, environmental stuff, genes, etc. Now, fatalism goes one step further. It is the idea that our fates are sealed, like our entire life was predetermined from birth. Now, in this video, I will be presenting data, arguments, and concepts to make my case for this new philosophy. I also think this one is quite overlooked. The only time that I would say I encounter fatalism is maybe in movies where the main character or hero, he has to fulfill his destiny or his fate. So it's usually like a movie archetype. But other than that, you don't really hear much about this concept. Now, the table of contents. Let's get to a quick overview of all the arguments that I will be covering in this video to make my case for fatalism. So the first one is wealth is generational. Only the rich get richer. Economies of scale. Paradox of talent. Crossman stick-lids paradox. And career plateaus. After these arguments, I want to delve deeper into counter-arguments like biases and misconceptions. So things like the two misconceptions I want to go over to are higher risk is higher reward, and finally the fiction of entrepreneurship. So my fatalism will mainly be applicable on entrepreneurship and wealth. The first argument, wealth is generational. One story I hear the most is that wealth can be earned through hard work and with luck, through starting a venture. Like you start a business and you make millions, becoming a self-made millionaire. Although the statistics are varied, this is not always the case. In many countries, wealth was inherited. Many statistics that I will be providing throughout the video will be coming from the Netherlands, by the way. The statistics show that multimillionaires and billionaires inherited their money through family. So it is not always about hard work. Some websites even show that this number is even increasing. That means that if you have rich parents, the children will be more likely to get rich too. So here are some sources that support this argument. Here is a Dutch news article about rich parents and rich children. This article shows that the wealth inequality is due to the roots of history and explain why the rich are rich today. And here another article that shows that kids, their income is already much higher if their parents help their kids out. So even if we're not talking about millionaires, but just being well off in general, then your parents still play an important factor to your future success. Here is one more article about the growing number of billionaires through inheritance. The argument being made, which I will try to prove throughout this video, is that your success relies on your parents and the environment you grow up with. So if we take the idea of fatalism that says that our future or fate is predetermined and your parents are the reason for your future success, that means people's future are predetermined from birth. Let's look at one counter-argument, however. So here I have a statistic from Data Pulse, and it shows the ratio between inherited wealth and self-made, which is different in every country. In total, there are more self-made millionaires, but this doesn't rule out fatalism yet, because this doesn't mean that no factors played a role in determining their life outcomes. If those millionaires tend to have a white background or all have a bachelor's or university degree, then that means their background played a role. Especially if factors like race and color play a role, then their future was predetermined in a way. Because isn't the idea behind self-made wealth not that you can reach status through hard work, not through predetermination? Self-made millionaires, even though there are more of them compared to millionaires who inherited their wealth, they only compose around 2 out of 100 people. So don't make the mistake that because self-made millionaires are more common, that multimillionaires are generally common and that you couldn't be likely to grow big too. Most of them are white and have a high degree. Not only this, but it is difficult to achieve status while coming from a family with low income. Children growing up with parents with higher incomes have more advantages. This can be proven by the Great Gatsby curve. This is an economic chart that shows that countries with higher income inequality have lower generational flexibility. It implies that in high unequal societies, a person's financial success is more heavily determined by their parents' wealth, making it harder to climb the economic ladder. It is important to know what self-made really means. There are more arguments to come, proving that it's mostly generational, predetermined, and just luck for very few people. Only the rich get richer. Before going deeper into their background, let's look at strategies like starting a business or venture. Is it possible or easy to grow rich from starting a venture? I want to analyze 3 different strategies: day trading, real estate, and growing a social media account. I want to answer the following question. Is it possible to get a passive income from starting any of these ventures and to achieve wealth through hard work? So, let's start with day trading. From experience doing day trading myself with perpetual contracts or Bitcoin, you can earn around 1% from your capital. So if you have 20,000 USDT on your account, you earn about 200 USDT from a trade. This can be earned over almost a month. Not much. Maybe you can make more a month, like your salary, if you do more trades. If, however, you would have 200,000 euros, on the contrary, you can start living with a passive income of 2,000 euros a month. In this case, you need a lot of money in order to make more money. People don't just have 200,000 euros saved on their account. But I can hear some trader critics talking about leverage and trading on bigger time frames. I want to explain some trading for the non-traders to explain this, and I'll show you that those critiques don't really work well. So the way trading works is that we take two currencies, like let's say Bitcoin and USDT, so US dollars. At the time of making this video, $1 can get you 0.00013 Bitcoins. That's not a lot. But reversed, 1 Bitcoin is around $80,000. All right, a lot. Now, let's say Bitcoin goes from 69 to 372 to 71,230. This is a 3% change. So if you would have $1 and you switched it for Bitcoin before this price increase happened, if Bitcoin has gone up with 3%, also your dollar has increased with 3%. So from $1 to $1.03. Now, in order to predict where the price is going, so you can make money on those price changes, you use technical analysis. So basically analyzing graphs in order to know what type of trade you need to make. So if you know in advance from the sort of the graph that Bitcoin will go up with 3%, then you're gonna play into that prediction. Certain technical analysis can be done over a couple of days, or it can even take up to a week. In a week or a day, not many predictable price changes can happen. You need to wait for some predictable pattern to occur, and then you can make future predictions a little bit in order to make a trade. So it can take up around a week to finish your strategy and set up your trade. Within the time frame of a week, no big price changes occur as well. Somewhere around or below 1%. You can trade on bigger time frames and bigger price changes, like maybe say 10%, but most of technical analysis is being lost in bigger time frames. You cannot really predict or analyze any meaningful graphs on bigger time frames. In which case you cannot really do risk management or make strategies on 10% price changes, for example. Another thing that you can do is use leverage. So maybe you are using 20,000 USDT on your account. Now, if you use leverage, you can multiply that amount in order to make more money. So let's say a leverage of 2 times, you would be trading with 40,000 USDT. So that's twice your own money. But law, especially in Europe, withholds people from doing anything more than 2 times leverage. If you could do 2 times leverage with 20,000 USDT, you would also only make around or about 400 euros a trade. Now, if you would do more trades a month, you could make your monthly earnings from this. So let's say you do 4 trades a month, so 400 times 4 is 1,600 euros. But with your monthly costs and necessities, you would be living a very average life and you're not making much savings. Now, what you could be doing is work with bigger time frames, like let's say 10% changes and 2 times leverage. Now, this is also a higher risk. You would lose a lot of your money if your trade is not good. Those trades are therefore much more offensive. Playing with 1% is much more defensive, on the other hand. And I will cover this later in the myths and biases part of the video. But according to decision theory, a riskful decision is not necessarily better than a safer decision. So the expected value of a decision is calculated by calculating the chances of something happening. Bigger swings in the graphs are higher risk. So this decreases the value of the decision. You might not understand what I'm saying right now, but I will cover this again in the topic higher risk is higher reward. So day trading is just a bit of a bummer. If you would play defensive, only 1%, not much leverage, you wouldn't be making too much money. And even if you would be making your monthly salary, then you wouldn't be saving up much money for the future because of all the monthly costs you would be having, like living somewhere and all that stuff. So let's consider another strategy. We want to look into real estate. Let's take another example. So you want to try out a different venture. You want to rent out property to people. You are a beginner and don't have much savings, but quite some. Let's say you have 20,000 euros again in savings. We're going to look in South Africa because the apartments there are much cheaper. So we can use our savings to buy the property. And we don't need to pay a mortgage. And we have to keep our earnings to ourselves, mostly. We want a small apartment. Let's say we want to rent out apartments to students. So if we're going to look at universities in Johannesburg, one interesting one is the University of Witwatersrand. Around the university there are regions like Parktown and Braamfontein. If we go to Property24, a website for apartments and houses in Johannesburg, we can look for some small apartment for a university student that is interested in renting it. So here we found an apartment, 1 bed, 1 shower and 23 meters of space, settled in Braamfontein, close to the university. Sounds ideal for students. Now 430,000 rands translates to 22,500 euros. So close to perfect what we have in our savings. We can probably cover those extra expenses with a little loan, or maybe we can borrow from our parents. Now, the following 2 questions. How much do students or people make in South Africa, and how much rent do people normally pay a month? The wealth inequality in South Africa is huge. There is a minority of people who are very rich. So if we focus on most people, like 50% of the population in South Africa, then people tend to earn around 8,000 rands a month. But these are non-students working every day. Let's just ignore that. But it translates to 419 euros. So people in South Africa really do not make a lot of money. Student accommodations like the one we found on Property24 usually cost around 4,000 rands a month. This is therefore 200 euros a month. Let's say you don't have to pay extra costs like taxes or fixes around the house. In that case, with 20,000 euros, you can make around 200 euros a month. But this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Didn't we just see that we can only earn about 1% of our capital with day trading too? So this is an interesting observation. Therefore, if you want to make a passive income, you need 200,000 euros in savings in order to make around 2,000 euros a month. But that much savings is a lot. Looking at some statistics and data, most Dutch people don't have enough savings to turn it into a passive income. So this means that only people with a lot of savings are able to earn more. Only the rich get richer. And where do those savings come from? Those 200,000 euros. They must either be lucky or must have inherited it. That means that if you don't have the savings, your life is predetermined in a way that you'll need to keep working every month. Take notice that I was also taking the most ideal situation of how much savings you might have and not having any cost like fixes for the room and taxes. Now, what you can see here from the graph, from the table, coming from manners.nl, which is a source, people till 25 years old have around 10,800 euros in savings. And then with every age, it increases. People who are like very old, like 75 years old, they have 75,000 euros in savings. But this shows that people generally don't have the savings, like 200,000, to make a passive income. These examples beg the question what a self-made millionaire really means, because it's impossible to grow fast without the right amount of capital, generally. To prove to you that you can earn about 1% of what you have in capital, let's consider one more venture, social media. Now, how about Instagram? Can it earn a lot of money? According to the website ecwid.com, an influencer below 100,000 followers can earn around 200 to 1,000 euros every post. So let's say you earn about 600 euros with 3 posts a month. So these are like collaborations. That means you earn 1,800 euros a month. Now, how much does a follower cost? With advertising on Instagram, I did mixed actions. So viewers can choose to follow, comment, or like. My result is that for every 6.44 euros, I got 1 follower. So if I would want around 35,000 followers, I would need to spend around 225,000 euros. I guess there are also other ways like paid collabs and investing into good edited posts. I guess that could lower the costs for the amount of followers you could earn. According to another source, a different source, it says that one Instagram follower costs around 3 euros, so that's like half. This means that if you would want 65,000 followers to earn with your posts, you need to spend around 195,000 euros. Close to that 1% again, by the way. But what about gaining organic followers? Let's cover this in the next argument, economies of scale. Economies of scale. Following up from the argument that the rich get richer, this can also be proven by the economy of scale. Once a company has grown to a certain level, it can output products with very little costs. Mass production gives companies an advantage in how they can lower the costs of their products. For companies at the local market, it is very difficult to reach a point of mass production. Although this can be more complex, like let's say local businesses, like let's say a supermarket can also get their ingredients from a local farmer, which might be more low cost as well. Now, economies of scale can also be present on social media. When an influencer or platform reaches a certain point, the cost to gain more followers gets lower. There are costs to producing a video like editing and also writing the scripts, the environment that the influencer is sitting in. When a platform is big, those costs to gain followers gets lower. That means that if you're not investing in Instagram promotions and advertisements to gain followers, you will need money to make good content. But from the beginning, or maybe generally, you will have a hard time to grow big because of the economy of scale. the cost to produce content for followers is too big. Now, the next argument, the paradox of talent. For my next argument, I want to answer the question if you think you could outperform your competitors, that you are unique and could possess some special talent, something that gives you an advantage over competitors. Very unlikely. The paradox of talent refers to the idea that in highly competitive fields, where one's baseline talent among people reaches a certain point, sheer luck and external factors become the primary determinants of ultimate success. In these scenarios, the most talented don't always win, the luckiest do. So the principle: in fields like professional tennis, once a group of players reaches the absolute peak of athletic ability, skill differences become microscopic. At this level, tournament outcomes are heavily dictated by random variables, a bad line call, favorable wind conditions, or a sudden injury to a rival. This means that if you're thinking you can still get successful from something through learning a new skill, remember that most fields right now are dominated by people who will most likely already possess very high skills in what they do. This is another proof that the self-made millionaire didn't specifically earn his wealth through hard work or great qualities. The next argument, the Grossman-Stiglitz paradox. This one will be very short. Very similar to the paradox of talent, but then applied to investing and trading. If analyzing financial data can give you an advantage in trading, but everyone is using the same data, then your knowledge is not giving you an advantage any longer to profit more. So this applies to day trading, where you can use financial data to make trades. The next argument, career plateaus. As I was scrolling through Instagram, I came across this post. Andrej Karpathy, the co-founder of OpenAI, joins Anthropic. To me, and I'm not sure if this counts for others, this sounds very inspiring. I mean, I really like data science, philosophy, and maths. I'm a very smart person, I believe. And sometimes I would get excited at the thought that I could also have a career like them, because I have the competence for it. But ask yourself, how does a person like Andrej got a position like that at Anthropic? You have to be realistic. It's because he already lives in that culture. So according to the website pagepersonnel.nl, who conducted a survey, 92% of workers want to get a promotion at work. In reality, every 2 years, only 16% of all workers earn a higher position at their current coworker. So in reality, the results or the actual results don't really line up with their expectations. Also, with age, your chances of getting a higher position decrease from 25% when you are below 35 years old to 5% at 55 years old. According to another source, almost half of all Dutch workers, 47%, are thinking of quitting their job, with one of the most important reasons they feel like they're not appreciated. This could be connected to the fact that they don't feel appreciated because they don't get promoted. According to some sources, most individuals who want to grow eventually hop to external companies in order to get management positions. According to another source, merely 0.5% to 2% of all workers eventually get a job as a district manager, so even less with higher positions. Now, some more information from another source. Managers with a non-Western migration background sit below 2 to 5% of the management positions. In the US, 86% of all managers are white. In the absolute C-suite, so CEO, SFO, blah blah blah, the homogeneity is even stronger. This could also be because most big companies in the Netherlands at least are more dominated by white men. So this also shows fatalism, your background, and the luck. It's very difficult to grow big. It was predetermined because of your background and other factors. Conclusion. With all these arguments covered, now you know, if you have a strategy in mind for growth and wealth, it will encounter one of these principles. It almost looks like there are these principles that exist, that govern this universe, that is withholding the majority of the population to grow into their dreams. And these principles, they don't just determine our actions, they determine our fate. For those self-made millionaires, it is not clear what gave them their opportunity. But from the arguments, it is clear that it couldn't be through hard work. As I showed you, only the rich get richer. People on the bottom have a hard time getting out. This has been one of the strongest cases for fatalism so far, I believe. But we're not done yet. I still want to debunk some biases and myths. Biases and misunderstandings. Higher risk is higher reward. In behavioral economics, there exists an experiment where people got to choose between 50 euros with certainty or make a 50% bet on winning 100 euros. Most people choose to take 50 euros. But according to decision theory, both options are equal in value. The value of both options are calculated by multiplying the reward with the chance of winning and the loss with the chance of losing. So it looks like this. Option A, 100% times 50 is 50 euros. And option B, 50% 100 euros plus 50% 0 euros is 50 euros. But the reverse is also true. Some people make the mistake that higher risk is higher reward, making people think that taking more riskful decisions are better decisions. And more risky decisions are not better decisions. Coming back to day trading, if you would play with higher time frames, then first of all, your trades takes longer. But if you want to trade on bigger price changes in short amount of time, you're making more offensive strategies, not defensive. And offensive is not necessarily better because they're higher risk. This also shows to me that in general, people who think that wealth can be achieved through hard work are wrong. If you made a fortune from trading, it was because you probably played with your luck. But looking at the graph of self-made millionaires, then this refutes the idea that self-made means hard work. They just got lucky. I really wouldn't try to play with a lot of leverage and 10% 10% price changes on a short amount of time and take that risk multiple times. The final and last misconception or myth, the fiction of entrepreneurship. There is a very interesting book on self-help literature called The Self-Help Compulsion. This book explains how self-help literature is not anything realistic, but more like a fictional story. I got some resistance from people who I shared my fatalism with. I think this resistance is coming from people who are way too influenced by self-help culture and social media. According to a statistic, worldwide, 90% of all startups fail. So only 10% of startups manage to become financially sustainable. according to this source. The interesting thing is that we may find a video like the one here, a TEDx talk. So it's called The 2 Reasons All Startups Fail. A title and video like this makes you feel special because 90% of all startups is a very high amount. But thinking that you can circumvent or avoid what all other 90% of startups do wrong, and you are the one who can be at the top 10%, makes you feel special. As if you possess some knowledge only top percent people know. But it is a fictional story. That is what literature and fictional stories do. But in this type of literature, the reader is the main character in the story.
The common myth is that mindset is the main factor in gaining success. As I was doing my research in fatalism and collecting data, also Gemini started generating biased answers, like how mindset and the power of belief can get you wealth through manifestation. These generations from the AI were coming from biased sources like Forbes and Ramsey Solutions. Ramsey is an author of multiple books stressing on the idea of mindset. So Dave Ramsey wrote books like Total Money Makeover, Financial Peace, Complete Guide to Money. Also Forbes tends to be biased. Myth-busting money and your mindset. How mindset determines your financial future. 80% of companies say a growth mindset among employees directly drives profits. I guess this explains why Gemini was offering biased answers when I tried to dig deeper. Ending. Originally there was way more content I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover arguments about why fatalism is existentially miserable. I might cover these in a separate video. Fatalism and the way I developed it now is one of the most interesting philosophies from myself lately. But there is more to come. But for now, thanks for watching.